go, of madness. Remember, death and destruction. That's all they have to offer us. That's what they're doing. This perpetual currency debasement. That's the only answer they have. Is just we got to just raise fees. This is always notice locally your taxes. Well, and people vote them. See, they vote to cut their own throats. Yes, currency debasement. That's it. Comes out of my pocket, goes into his pocket, but somehow it's good. So who are these people? Somehow they're not being, they've got an ulterior motive. Their thinking is askew. Somehow they think it's going to benefit them. Okay, or they can afford it maybe. Okay, if they've got a critical mass of people that are going to afford to raise your tax, they are going to vote to raise your taxes, and that's a democracy. That's what you got. It's authoritarian. It's making people do something. There's no waivers. There's no opt out here. You've got to pay it. If you want to not break the law, because this is by authority of law that they're doing these things, the government, then you're breaking the law. You're a criminal. If you don't conform, if you try to avoid or evade paying a tax, that's against the law. That's illegal. It's a crime, and you can be penalized and punished for doing it. And the same private entities, hey, you don't pay your rent, you're under the bridge. You're the next guy. So that's a threat. That's plenty enough threat. So in order to extract these exorbitant taxes, private and governmental, they need us in fear. That's the incentive. That's the motivation to get your butt to work. Because if you don't pay it, you consider the implications, and you're convinced that you've got to pay this tax. That it's in your interest to, comply, conform, go with the flow, because it's a path of least resistance. So to sum this up, okay, like I said, a child can understand basic capitalism. Supply and demand, free market, where the government doesn't meddle, they don't intervene like in 2008. Let it crash. This is pulling the bandage off. We have a reset. We have what's called a market correction. And, okay, we start a new, fresh game, okay, with a much more level playing field. Not perfect yet. But if we could work that direction, we'd be fine, but we're not being allowed to. So our government is rogue and fascist. That's the establishment status quo. That's who Trump is fighting against. That's why they hate him. They don't want things fixed. If things are fixed, they're rendered irrelevant. You understand? They need things broken to be relevant. So supply and demand, very simple. We find easier and easier methods to produce the things we need and want. Okay? End of story. That's why your currency goes up in worth, not down, automatically, naturally, organically. Okay? Child understands it. Child understands it. Understands competition. That if the government doesn't interfere and meddle and intervene, okay, then capitalism can work. Because you fail, then you pay the penalty. But if somebody else succeeds, then but they're on their own. Okay, they can't. They're not colluding with the government. They don't have that going for them. So understand what's going on here. They greatly exacerbate our problems of currency debasement by interfering. The government does. They take away free market. There's no free market capitalism left. Okay, it's all manipulation, price fixing, price rigging. You better understand, this is the way it has to be. We're selling less of this, so you got to pay more. So they've turned capitalism, supply and demand, on its head. Do you understand? And they say regulation now is the government stepping in to bail out the too big to fail, the too big to jail. That's capitalism. That's free market. That's fascism, folks. So that's the establishment now. It's fascist. It's rogue. And it's serious. It's life and death. People are dying because of this. Dubious warfare, suicides, crime, homicides. Okay, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. Women aborting their babies because of financial fear. It's not a joke. It's not funny. It's serious. Very serious. We're in a lot of trouble. And we got to face it. We all have to just really start caring about our next door neighbor, everybody in your local community, all around you, rich, poor, and in between. And all of us see eye to eye and realize, hey, the only answer is universal prosperity. And how are we going to do that? Through sound economic policy, so that your currency can continue to increase in worth. Do you understand how that would solve the problem right there? But they're not going to let it. We're so far removed from that paradigm. We're in it so deep now that it's just, I don't know what it's going to take to extricate ourselves. It's going to like take God's help. We need God's help for us to get what's going on here and how to turn it around. We're going to have to be creative and think, as individuals, but as a family, an extended family, and to really care about each other like we care about ourselves, and understand there's a good selfish reason too, that in order for you to be truly free, you need others to be free. That's it. End of story. That's enough incentive and motivation for all of us to really give a damn and really care about the financial welfare of others, because that means your financial welfare, your sense of freedom and well-being and happiness, to experience joy and bliss and contentment and peace and safety and security, all those things we all want. I don't care if you're a socialist or a capitalist, you want those things. Conservative or liberal, Democrat or Republican, we all want those things, same things. And if we're going to set a good example for other nations, we got to get our own act together, man. And we better start getting serious and get busy, man, and really start getting this thing. Be empowered, and then empower others, and don't let them prescribe to an ignorance is bliss philosophy. Look, that ship has sailed, man. You can't take that pill anymore. Okay, you're gonna have to take this one. That's maybe harder to swallow, but in the long run, it's your only hope. Okay, for happiness and a clear conscience, be able to stand before your owner someday and say, I cared about everybody. I didn't just care selectively about people in my own little group, my peers, whatever. No, I cared about everyone, man. This is what it's going to take, and for us to get it, that it's for our own benefit. That your currency go. How can anybody object to your currency going up? Anybody, rich, medium, poor. How can anybody object to the things I'm saying? Do you understand? Even if Wall Street crashed tomorrow, okay, and your $1 million 401k went to 10,000. Do you understand? If that 10,000 was actually the equivalent now of $2 million in buying power, who cares? So you understand? Even the rich don't have anything to fear from this scenario I'm talking about. We've all been duped, man, tricked into believing that somehow, what's good for me has to by default has to be bad for somebody else. We've been riding that way for a long time, and it's just not true. It can be universally good. We have an instinct to serve one another. And if we were all just doing jobs that were useful, that didn't revolve around the problem persisting, we'd be working 5 hours a week if we're lucky. Okay, we'd be looking for ways to serve one another. We'll get along so much better. The only difference is we get to go to work with a song in our heart, a song on our lips, joy in our heart, and a bounce in our steps. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. There's many ways to skin a cat. Just consider that we have an inherent right, a divine right to share in Mother Earth's natural goodies. That's enough. Okay, forget the greatest natural resource, the greatest asset of all, like Adam Smith pointed out in his book, The Wealth of Nations, which is simply a willing workforce. And we all have a right to share in each other's labors. Okay, he said a civilized society, even back then when he wrote it over 200 years ago, could support a lot of idleness. And you could say, well, I resent those lazy people. We should make them work. Hey, you know what? It's their earth. If everybody's born with a silver spoon in their mouth, then you're just going to have to suck it up and say, look, maybe there's something psychologically wrong. They just want to sit on the beach and drink mojitos all day. They're out of their mind, because I'm getting such gratification from doing what I do and utilizing my God-given talents and being useful and productive and appreciated by my fellow human beings and what I offer. It feels so good, this love, this reciprocal love, that I don't have to do this. I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it because I have a nature. I have a godly instinct, because I'm made in the image and likeness of God. That's what we'll be figuring out, and we'll go out and we'll just do what we do instinctively, naturally. And it's just going to be, we serve as we want, for who we want, where we want, when we want, how we want. I mean, end of story. And we don't need anybody, right, with a whip keeping us in place, with money holding. Hey, you need this. This is the key. No, no more. No, we don't need it. Everything will become free. We could have that happen gradually with sound economic policies, that state of affairs, but they're not going to let that happen. If they can stop it, they'll. The establishmentarians will stop it. I mean, there's so much power, so much lust, the love of money, the root of all evil. Do you understand what's in these people's hearts that are creating the policies that are crammed down our throats? We're forced to live under. They exempt themselves from. I mean, it's just insane, folks. But anyhow, I think I've talked enough about that, and I'm going to move on to some other things. This past weekend, I took a trip to San Diego to one of my nieces, my twin niece's wedding, and I posted the footage from part of the trip down the Big Sur coast. But boy, it was harrowing experience. It's been a long time since I drove on the west side of the highway, and around some of those turns on that road. You think about some big vehicle driving too fast, losing control, and just pushing you right over the edge, and it's one heck of a drop in some of those spots. It's where they had that big landslide. It was closed for the better part of a year, I think. But I think that footage was in there. And then there was some structure that I'd never seen before. It's new, and it's really quite remarkable, built right on the edge of the cliff. That footage is in there. I think it's on video number 7. But, yeah, it's really quite remarkable. The giant pillars, and it's not really a tunnel. It's, I don't know how would you describe it? The word I'm thinking of is not coming to my mind, but like a promenade or something like that. It's a ancient promenade or something, giant pillars and really artistic. But boy, you got to wonder about the people that built that, because that was very precarious working situations. Of course, it's easier today than it would have been anciently with modern heavy equipment and stuff, but nevertheless, it's still quite a feat of human endeavor. Oh, anyhow, but it was great, man. San Diego was great. I got to hang out with my 2 daughters in their early 30s now, and my stepmom, my sister. Oh, I just had a remarkable time down there. The wedding was great. All these beautiful women there, and well-dressed men, handsome men, and great ceremony. Just a lot of fun. Took a lift to the wedding, and it was kind of a ride share deal with these Lyft or Uber, whatever it is. I think they're collaborating now. But I got to sit next to a gal. We're sharing with her. She was from Spain. Beautiful young woman, probably in her 20s, but she was very personable, just gorgeous. In retrospect, I feel like I should have proposed to her. I mean, I was looking pretty good myself, but maybe I'm a little nuts about this, but a man spends too long alone, and he knows he can never be happy as a single man. Women do much better single, but even the Bible would confirm these things. I teach about that, because it's written that it's not good for a man to be alone. But I think a lot of women feel that by extension. A lot of women are, they're not happy being single. We all know that too. So it's just, it's a tough road to hoe, singledom, and there is no such thing as self-satisfaction. That's a myth. But you do what you can to be happy one day at a time. But one of these days, I hope I can find the right woman that God wants me to be with, because I am not going to be content. I'm not going to be happy. I know. It's like living half a life, being single. But anyhow, I just want to say I just had a wonderful time. Got to go to the beach and get in the ocean a little bit, and it's a really nice town. Even the homeless people in San Diego, You get near the coastal area there, and they all even seem to be happy. Everybody's in a pretty good mood. The weather's good, and that helps put people in a pretty good mood. So I really like San Diego. Everybody on Earth ought to be able to live in San Diego. It's much more settled than Northern California. It's one of the things I've noticed. That's why I kind of like Southern California better because there's not so much hype. It's not growing so quickly. It's a little more laid back in that regard. I think rents are actually a little lower down there. Housing costs are actually a little lower.